Vehicles moving out, vehicles moving out.
The vehicles represent the characters. In the same way that costume and hair and weapons and all the artifacts they carry, they have to be very character-driven.
Choosing between the vehicles on this film has now become like choosing between children for me. When we were first talking about the character, George wanted me to learn about making machines and how all of these cars run. And I will say, it helped me understand the world more. And that allowed me to be incredibly vulnerable within it.
Even though it's historically before Fury Road, we have vehicles which are new, that are unique.
Talking with Colin Gibson, the wonderful production designer, one of the organizing ideas in the design of the film is that everything must be made from found objects repurposed. There's no manufacture of anything new.
If something is to survive, it has to have an innate worth. It can be mechanical wonder, it can be structure, it can just be that this is the best way to kill the bastard who wants to kill you. But that finding something and treasuring it gave rise to stockpiles of things we could use, and then tried our best to use them so out of context, they give you a little arresting jolt. This is the salvage artist team. A lot of the repurposed objects, weaponry, hand props, everything is basically made here. George wanted upwards of 3,000 motorbikes in this locust plague. The bikes became a much more interesting design problem. There seems to be a lot less we can do with them. It's the sheer volume of motorbikes. We expect to do around 160, of which there's probably 100 that are separate characters. Because of that, we broke the motorbikes up into different tribal groups. Obviously, our biker group of banditry and brotherhood, they were obviously a lot of heavier Harleys, Hogs. The preppers, the people whose paranoia was actually proven to be not such a bad idea. The police, prison guards, and the prisoners themselves, who funnily still hang together, and they still have the weaponry, the gear. The mortifiers, basically we envisaged as the descendants of an SAS group who perhaps had escaped the last great trench warfare battle of the eastern seaboard. There you go. The happy clappers who had rushed to the desert, waiting for the rapture after the rupture. The Rubillies, our inbred redneck friends, the mutations that had built over generations, which were fanned a little by the radioactive dust blowing in from the coast, gave us a group who had both resilience and a certain nastiness.
There are lots of really cool ones. Like, obviously the Thunder bike is awesome. It's not Mary's bike, but it's a really cool bike, and it's extremely loud.
I've been running around set with my little film camera, just taking pictures of everything. The madness, the scale, the itty-bitty details. It's the most incredible world building I've ever seen.
Bikes represent all the changes that Dementus was going through and sort of map out his journey.
Dementus, obviously we needed him to have something that set him apart from anyone else. The one way to do that was to upgrade the bike and also to make it not of a found object. To take a Rotax 7-cylinder plane engine, turn sideways, mount in between the two big wheels and fabricate a motorbike around it.
At some point, Colin showed me some footage, a chase between motorbike chariots. And it really evoked the chariot race from William Wyler's Ben-Hur, one of the classic scenes, let's call it action scenes of cinema.
So over time, the bike transforms as he does, as he becomes more regal and dominant and sees himself as, you know, the emperor.
Inside of a vehicle or a truck, you have roll cages, you have helmets, you have, the best protection. When you come to a motorcycle, you're totally exposed.
My dad used to race bikes when he was younger. As we got a bit older, and then we started getting bikes, a few road bikes and dirt bikes. That was how I saw the first Mad Max film. My dad threw the telly on and said, have a look at this.
A pair of R18s providing most of the motive power, the beautiful radial, now brought in a lead show pony, and a new chariot. Sadly, we did want to have the ponytails and manes. There weren't enough horses left at the end of the wasteland, so these are actually human hair. But nonetheless, so we have braking, throttle, etc. as footpad controls, so he's really just steering and holding on for dear life.
The radial bike is pretty tricky to steer, yeah. It's great in a straight line, but not so much to turn.
Every time I see the war rig, it takes my breath away. I'm kind of in love with my baby.
The war rig in Fury Road, though it was a beast somewhere between hot rod and tractor, was towards the tail end of wonderment. This time round, George thought it would be good to make a shinier statement, more Louis XIV, more Sun King.
In story terms, it's a much younger version. This giant silver beast, it's twice the size, it's twice as powerful.
It's the wasteland equivalent of building some magnificent spacecraft that's going to take us to Mars or beyond.
The intakes, the exhausts, the manifolds, into the air filter, these are all basically handmade. These tankers have all been skinned and respun in stainless.
Within the cabin, the detail, it's beautiful to look at. There's a gear stick made out of somebody's femur. The steering wheel is crazy. It's got a massive skull made of screws and bolts in the middle, holding a grenade in its mouth. It's just crazy. I love it in there. It's like a temple on wheels.
Sydney at the moment is awash with large mine units that are building tunnels under the harbour. So the Bombing Knocker takes its form from one of those, but it's also a mace, chains and balls, even a bowling ball. And we've made an advertisement for him to drag through the wasteland, proclaiming his greatness.
They literally had someone come and design a mural for the side of the war rig. It's incredible. It's so beautiful.
We worked a system of carving that story in a series of curved sand molds. Basically, it's a three-dimensional cutout that then is cast in cast steel, and then these freezers were mounted onto the curved body of the tanker and then polished within an inch of their lives. To bastardize George Orwell, 4 wheels bad, 2 wheels good. The idea is that Dementus takes what he wants. To show him growing, we couldn't just go to a 4-wheel vehicle for him. He'd already disparaged the idea.
I was trying to get a hold of it actually and see if it could end up at my farm, but I'm not sure it's going to happen.
Because he's gathered so many people around of all different status, he needs more status.
Oh, I got a message from Morton Joe.
We had a 4-wheel monster truck in the last picture, which was Rictus's. So this time round, we took a tow truck, a military Mack, put the two together with the Pope's seat mounted at the back.
I drove a monster truck in a show before I got my license to drive on the roads. The monster truck kind of became more normal to me than a car. When we got to the shop and they gave us all the schematics and how they wanted to look with the Mack cab on it and stuff, we were just like, wow, this thing's crazy.
It
Obviously started off as a monster truck, so I stretched the chassis and set another axle on it, reconfigured the cab and got it to go again. The engine's based on a big block Chev, standard 454, probably around 800 horsepower. But most of the scenes here, they're doing between 60, 65 Ks, and yeah, it's doing it quite nice.
The winch units, the steel, the double boom poles of these tow trucks are all fabricated to operate, actually tow, lift and move. Like everything else that George operates, we need to make them operate and make them real.
I love this car, and I love the fact this is kind of like his and hers, so that you go and have a weird honeymoon, which is quite appropriate in some ways.
I drive the war rig.
Not today. Today you drive Pursuit.
The Valiant is basically our love and revenge. This was a slant 6 rather than a V8, jacked up and super turboed. It was always meant to be an escape vehicle.
Reverse through that, throw it past the gate, right? So that's where you're getting most of the zoom.
It's had most of the paint and Duco blown off it, but what is left is the colour of heart and love, just a spattering of red.
Furiosa, when she becomes this avenging figure, she needs a vehicle to represent that.
George, about halfway through the design process, started to work towards running these vehicles up sand dunes. And so suddenly motors that were mounted in the front were better set towards the rear and become mountain climbing. So this was the Chev hot rod with a rear-mounted turbo-aspirated V8.
When we started to design these vehicles, there was one school, and was mainly amongst the designers, that wanted this based on a muscle car. In Fury Road, we had a car called Elvis, which I loved, which again was a hot rod. So we basically solved it by Colin would develop both of them and build them. Whichever we finally chose, whichever fitted the story and the characters best, we'd use the other one as background, and that's what it was.
That definitely is muscle car. This is much more, for me, particularly going on a big set. If you look at the makeup on Scrotus, it almost looks like his car. And I just saw the footage that was done the other day. I'm very impressed.
We didn't take a vote on it, but finally at the end, it was clear that this fitted the story better.
The Black Dolly of Doom, used in a vehicle that I was hoping to be one of the main vehicles in the show, but was gazumped. If nothing else, I get to keep the steering wheel. I've offset the pain because I've already bet against myself.
All right, good, okay.
It just came down to character, and because she takes on the aggression, I think in the final beauty contest, that was the one that won the trophy.
This is where I get a bit motorhead about it. The gears don't necessarily always just land, so you have to be really on it, but it's a great car, and there are teeth inside of that car, which I really like. In this universe, being human is at your own detriment. She makes herself a machine. She is a machine, and that begins this mythology around her.